welcome back to another episode of the Baddie Besties podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa.
And I'm your co-host, Samira, aka Samski. And today we have a special guest. But before I introduce her, I want to tell you about the series, if you have not tapped in yet, to HeHe Barbie. So HeHe Barbie, just a fun fact, she had over 250 occupations dating back to 1960. Okay, Barbie, like I said, has been booked and busy. And today we are bringing on HeHe Maternity Concierge and Birth Services, a doula who is just paving the way from wellness, empowering births, and just owning the damn industry. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to HeHe.
Oh, thanks so much for having me here, you guys. It truly is such an honor, not only to be able to do this work, to be here with you guys, too.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. She's so inspiring. I told her this crazy stat before we started. So I just, let's get right into things. I just wanted to really kick it off. Just the modern take on motherhood, right? What it means. How has it evolved over the past decade with your experience? And before we even get to that, what made you want to be a doula? What got you into the industry to begin with?
Yeah, okay, so I have a human development and family studies master's. That's what my master's degree is in. And I started out in actually early childhood education. So I was working with children birth through 5 and their families. And when I was working with the youngest of babies, I actually started to realize, wow, these parents are struggling. There is nobody to help them. There's nobody to give them information. There's very little resources. And it seemed to me like everybody that told me about their birth was having really horrible births. And I just thought, there has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a better way to raise our families and to have our babies. And so then I looked into being a doula. Actually, someone at work was like, you should be a doula. And I did. And it was a weekend course. And I thought, wow, in addition to the weekend course and having my master's degree, I think I could really change the way that people have babies. And over the last decade, we really have been able to do that. And we've been able to really just help people have good births and avoid C-sections, avoid birth trauma, avoid all sorts of kind of like bad birth stories. I know that sounds kind of gruesome, but having a baby in America is not the easiest thing, and our stats continue to be abysmal. And our maternal mortality is rising. Our infant mortality is rising, and so it's tough. And so, I think having that education available to women is really what started it, and it just kind of catapulted me into where I am today.
Yeah, so it's been 10 years since you started this biz?
Nearly. So it's 2025 now, and I started in 2016. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. And, honorable mention, she just hit 100K on Instagram.
Thank you so much.
It is a huge milestone. Hey, we're trying to be like you, okay?
Yeah. We're trying to be like HeHe.
But I just wanted to see how, you mentioned that, you saw these stories. And, we mentioned just a conversation beforehand, we're not mothers, but why this is such an important conversation to women that are looking at motherhood. I don't know if you want to speak more onto that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our society does a really great job of holding down women. I think everyone in this room knows that, right? This country loves to just oppress women, and it's very clear from the legislation that happens to our workforce laws to the crazy price of childcare and no help there that this country doesn't truly care about women and children. And so I think that this country wants you to act as if you don't have children, but then they flaunt the idea of have children, reproduce, grow your families. But then it's who's gonna care for mom when I have the baby? Who's gonna help me with the child care duties? Who's gonna help me with the child care cost? Who's gonna help me to pay for this family? And it's certainly not our country. And so, women are kind of stuck to fend for themselves, and that sucks.
Yeah. Oh my God, I totally get that. I'm not a mom yet. I want to be a mom, but I mean, I see so many moms going through it. I know, like you said, even the price of daycare. Especially if mom and dad both have to go to work and have a 2-house paycheck to be able to pay for the entire family and whatnot. And then childcare being so expensive, and I mean everything else, the birth situation. It's a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean you have to think about the costs that are accrued for all of those things. So you have not only childcare costs, that's after your baby gets here, but think about the things that, you have to pay for during pregnancy. It's all of the baby gear, and it's your childbirth ed courses, and it is your lactation courses. And then you have all of the people who help you after your baby gets here, that village, which used to be included because we all lived by our families, and we all had our aunties and our grandmothers and our community members would come and be with you when you had a baby. It's not like that anymore. You're now paying for postpartum support. You're now paying for lactation support. That wisdom that used to be passed down through our lineages, it is no more. And so that's tough.
No, it's so tough. I know, I can't speak for America, but I know in Korea, my stepsister, her husband's in the Army or Air Force, excuse me, and she had a baby in Korea, and they had like 1 month, they had like a whole postpartum. I don't know if you heard about it. And they have somebody living with them, making them food.
Yeah.
Just like they have that entire experience. And she was like, I could not imagine not having that support.
Yeah. I wish that we would take a lot more influence from the Asian cultures. They really do prop up women and children in their cultures. They really do care about birth and postpartum, and they truly do care about keeping that family unit together. And in this country, we don't do a really great job of it, but I hope maybe one day, hopefully sooner rather than later, that we can do that, and we can keep our families kind of together, and we can start to give women the support that they deserve to have a joyful motherhood, because I think a lot of times people get into motherhood and it turns out to not be what they thought it was going to be, because it's a lot harder than what I think is portrayed to us before we become moms.
Yeah. I was about to say, there's a lot of things too. Even you just started listing some of the things we have to pay for. You said like lactation course, something. I was like, what? I mean, I know what lactation is and stuff, but I didn't know you had to pay for a lactation course, and it's a whole thing, right? There's all these unexpected expenses that come if you don't have the research. So I just love that you're able to be a really safe resource for women to actually figure it out. Even there are so many women that are trying to get pregnant with their husbands or their boyfriends, or, just partner. Get pregnant. Now they're scared. They're not sure, what they know, what they don't know, et cetera, et cetera. So it really feels like a confusing, chaotic atmosphere when it could feel more safe and beautiful and relaxing.
Yeah. Relaxing. That's the key, right? Is we want our moms to be relaxed so that they can show up for their kids and their families in a way that is present and joyful and positive, rather than being, touched out and stressed and financially strained. Think about how that impacts your parenting, where if we just had a little bit more help, it probably wouldn't be like that.
I guess before I jump into our next segment here, I just have to, because it went viral on like the cost after you have a baby in that hospital bill. Have you seen those videos where they're like, it's $50,000, and if I didn't have health insurance? So just kind of like your take, seeing women that, like, obviously with health insurance, it subsidizes a lot of that cost, but to see a bill is like $50,000, $60,000 to have one child in America. And if they do not have health insurance, kind of that burden that it places on these, these women and these families. Yeah.
I mean, you also have to think that you say health insurance subsidizes that. We pay premiums every single month.
That part.
It's the point that we're paying astronomical amounts every single month, and then we still get slapped with a humongous bill after having a baby.
Yeah.
But the nation is pushing women to have babies. Our birth rate in America is actually declining. Globally, it's kind of declining as well, but especially here in America. And I do think that finances are a large part of it. And I think just how hard motherhood is and how little resources and help is out there for moms also has a lot to do with it.
I think just kind of to like hammer on that point, seeing like, I guess a little bit about me. My mom had me at 22, and just like, now, like, I'm 27 years old, and she's like, wow, like, at your age, like, I've already had a baby.
I had a 5-year-old. You're like, I could not imagine having a 5-year-old right now.
Literally, I could not even think about it right now.
Literally.
And the thing is, I feel like that's really, I want a child, I do, but the financial means that it takes to raise a child and give them, a good life, or like you said, even before giving them that life, like, the process, the hospital, the lactation, like all of these resources that you need, I feel like it's just become such a financial burden, at least for millennials, Gen Z. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So I guess any advice for, for us?
We want babies, but we're scared.
We're scared. I'm so scared. I'll get into the pain part, but the finance part is a huge part. Like you mentioned, it has declined significantly over the past couple of years.
Yeah. In terms of the pain, I mean, we can get into this. I don't think you have to be scared of birth. There's a way that you can have a baby that is very positive and empowering and is going to make you feel like a total badass for the rest of your life, because not only did you grow that baby, but you birthed that baby,
like, I had
right?
a whole human inside me.
Yeah, literally, that you grew from scratch. Think about it. When I make sourdough from scratch, I'm like, yes, I cannot imagine what I'm going to feel like when I birth a human. I'm like, oh my God, I made you from scratch. That's crazy. But, going back to the financial piece, think about all of your prenatals. Think about the amount of time that you have to take off of work, drive into your prenatals. You're not compensated for any of that. And it also takes away, some companies are making you use PTO or time off. And so there's this constant struggle of, where do I put my energy? Where do I put my money? And how do I find this balance as a woman in America? And I just think that's super hard. And I don't think there's a good answer right now for any of us.
Hey, you kept it a stack. We keep it a stack over here, Body Besties.
and don't worry, HeHe is going to find a solution for all of us.
Put our trust in HeHe.
I know, but her services alone is just impacting so many women. And I'll let you get into stats, but this brings me on to the next segment here, your concierge maternity services. So really breaking down the concepts of it. What do you offer? And I know you said an amazing fun fact on how many C-sections, so I'll leave that up to you.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah.
Yeah, okay, so my team does between like 30 and 50 births each year. And, one of our biggest things is, so in America, we have a 33% C-section rate. The World Health Organization says that a country of our stature should have about a 15% C-section rate. So not only have we doubled it, but we have surpassed doubling it. So my team works really, really hard to avoid unnecessary C-sections, which I like to call unnecessarians. And last year, we only had 3 unwanted, unplanned C-sections out of all of our clients.
Woo! Let's take a second.
Thanks so much.
We need more of that.
We do need more of that. And I don't want you to think that we didn't have more C-sections than that. We had nearly 10 chosen C-sections. So a lot of people think that if you're choosing a C-section, you don't need doula support. But that's not true. There's a way that you can go in and have a very empowered C-section. And that's what we do. If you come to us and say, I want a C-section, I'm choosing it, and I want to have a positive one, we'll teach you exactly how to do that. How do you have those conversations with your provider? What questions are you should you be asking? And then how do you actually, day of, go in and, employ the things that we've taught you to actually achieve a positive hospital C-section or hospital birth? So yeah, thanks so much. In terms of being a concierge, it started because I thought that when I first entered the doula arena, I felt as if the support that was out there was a bit too shallow for what I would have wanted for my own birth. So traditionally, doulas will meet with you once or twice, maybe 3 times before your birth, and every doula is going to run their business a little different. And so when I thought about who I would want in my birth, I would have wanted to meet them more than once or twice. And so I started out offering 4 prenatals, and then I quickly realized that is not enough for me to educate these women on how to do this. And so then I went to 5, and then we went to 6, then we went to 8. And so now we offer 10 prenatals, and we're meeting with you 10 times throughout your pregnancy. You also have a 24-hour concierge line where you get your team of doulas, and you can contact them 24/7. Phone call, FaceTime, video call, email, text message. I mean, it truly is like a concierge at the bottom of your hotel. And then we attend your labor. Obviously, we're there with you day of. And then we stick around for a minimum of 90 days. So depending on the support that you want.
We need my doula. I'm like, I'm not even pregnant. I'm like, I need it. It's a wholesome support package. It really is everything that you need from start to finish. It includes your childbirth education. Everything is tailored to you. It's based on your birth goals. So like I said, if you want a C-section, we'll help you plan that. If you want an unmedicated birth, we'll help you plan that. If you're choosing an elective induction, we'll help you plan that. If you're choosing a vaginal unmedicated birth, but then at the end of pregnancy, something pops up and you need a medical induction, we'll help you pivot to that. And so for me, one of the greatest benefits of having people with you from start to finish is they know your story, they know your goals, and they know what your end goal is, right? And so no matter what happens in your labor, no matter what twists and turns or pivots that pop up, we are able to twist and turn and pivot with our clients to help keep them on that straight and narrow. And so for me, it's just, like I say, it's so fulfilling. I always joke that I have like the best job in the world, and I know everybody feels that way, but like, I really think I have the best job in the world. I love that. That's huge. You know, my nephew is turning 3 soon. And I was there for his birth.
Oh, wow. In the room.
I was in the room.
How exciting.
I loved it. I was like ready to cry.
Wait, are you a doula?
No, I'm not a doula, but I definitely
Emotional
need
support.
a doula. I was her doula for the day.
I love it. I love it so much. It's a very special experience to be in with someone. It brings you closer. It is just you get to see that person transform from like who they were before, and they go through this process, and then they're a different person. Like, you're a different woman after you have your baby. You just are. And so for me, it's just such an honor to be part of that.
Yeah. Are you working directly with their doctor, like that communication's directly in place? So how is that experience like, and what is your day-to-day like? What is it? I know it's probably different because everyone is different, but
yeah, it is. So prenatally, we'll go to your prenatals. We don't have much communication with your providers prenatally just because there's not too much reason. Every now and then we'll get a call from a doctor. Let's see, can I give you an example that's not HIPAA? Let me think of something. I've had doctors call me. This isn't a great example, but I've had doctors call me before and ask me to convince my client of something, and I just have to gently push back on them and say, that's not the role I play. If you're truly concerned about this, I'm happy to come to the next prenatal. We can all have a discussion. But at the end of the day, my client has the autonomy to make decisions for themselves. It's something I believe very deeply in, that women just deserve the autonomy to make decisions for themselves, even if it's not the decision that I would make for myself or that doctor would make for themselves. That woman has to ultimately be able to make the decision for herself. And that's her right. And for me, that's one of the biggest roles that a doula plays. It protects your ability to have your autonomy, to be respected, to decline things that don't feel good to you, to not be rushed in labor or pressured into decisions that don't feel good to you. Because we know that's a really big problem in American hospitals right now in birth.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like nurses and doctors too that don't have that emotional connection with the patient, right? They do this day in, day out, right? That's just their job. Yeah. So I think it's beautiful to have someone that you've been working with pretty much your entire pregnancy, and know she's going to look out for you, know she has your best interests at heart.
We're like your personal cheerleader.
Yeah, but I feel like you're actually more than that. It's the impact to have that advocate, even though you're saying I'm giving you the autonomy, but it's the fact that like a lot of women, they don't know, right?
Right?
And you don't know what you don't know.
You're right.
If you're going to the provider and they're saying this is the best thing to do, at least you have someone like you that are saying, here are your options, and you can now make a more informed decisions. And sadly, a lot of women, I don't want to say it's a trap, but they are being misled that this is the best thing, and truly it's not the best thing for them. I mean, just speaking, I know, like, I don't know, the Serena Williams story, and she speaks on like how being a Black woman, it was extremely hard. Like, she almost died at childbirth, and because of these hospitals and because of what her provider told her, it was a very unfortunate situation that continues to happen.
Well, systemic racism runs rampant in the hospital systems, right? That's not new news.
Yeah.
And I think if someone of the stature of Serena Williams experiences that, what does it mean for your lay people? What does it mean for your average, everyday American? And you're right. You nailed it when it comes to maybe it's not intentionally being misled by your doctors. Sometimes, probably, for sure. I don't think a lot of healthcare professionals set out to mislead their people. But what I do think happens is that the hospital system has a very specific track that they want people to go down because they have profits to meet. They have investors to answer to. They have administration that has been removed from actual patient care for many years, making decisions for the people on the bottom that are doing the patient care. And when you have that disconnect, when you start to put profits over people, we are going to see our stats suffer from that. We're going to see women die in labor. We're going to see that racism rise to the top. We're going to see people making decisions that are not aligned with them because no one sat down and talked to them about all their choices. They only told them about A and B. But then my client calls me and says, I don't like either one of those options. And I say, well, did you talk about C? Did you talk about D? Did you talk about E? What about F? And they're like, no one talked to me about any of that. And so that, I think, is a major missing link that happens in our hospital is that our hospital providers just aren't taking the time to talk to people about truly all of their options in a very transparent way. And if they do, oftentimes it's actually not non-biased. There's usually some sort of influence there. It's like, well, you know, we don't want you to go over your due date for X, Y, and Z, knowing that most first-time moms actually do go 5 to 9 days past their due date. And it's safe. So why would we not let women go past their due date, right? You have to kind of follow what are those influences there.
That's kind of what you mentioned, the unintentionally misleading, right? Some things too, I feel like, okay, so I don't want to say fun fact because it's not fun.
Unfun
fact, but my brother, and this has to do with birth, but my brother in the past two months, he had 2 major surgeries. He broke his femur and his appendix burst.
Oh my God.
And I know, it was bad. He's 16 years old, a really sad situation. Shout out to you, Gavin, if you listen to this. But what I've noticed, because I was in and out of hospitals, doctors, you know, like you mentioned, profits over people. Yeah. It's not even like I can tell, like, they're human at the end of the day. Like, they want to share all the information. It's like, there's always another patient. Like, there's always the next person. So they're rushing the services. Like, my brother came out of a major surgery, like his appendix burst. He has, it was like fluid all over his stomach, TMI, but.
And so painful.
Yeah,
what a traumatic experience.
And he was 16, mind
Truly.
you. So, like, the next couple days, he was like, I'm in so much pain. We went to go see the doctor, and they were rushing us. It was like 15 minutes. We have another person. I'm like, so imagine, like, when you're going through the birthing process, where it can be, there's high fatality rates for women. Like, you can die, giving birth. Like, it is very serious. And they're rushing you in the process because there's a next woman or there's a next thing. So that for me is like your services, like why you say you're not just a cheerleader, at least in my eyes. You are impacting women, and hey, everyone needs a HeHe in their life.
Hear us roar.
No, oh my gosh. No, seriously. That's changing families, changing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impacting everyone.
Thank you so much, you guys. Yeah, it truly is an honor. I mean, you know, if the healthcare system's not going to be able to put you first, then I will. And you can know that you may look out into your hospital room and no one has your back. But when you look to the side, I'll be there and I will always have your back.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think, again, even just having somebody to go through A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way down to Z, if anything, you know, you can tell that you care.
Oh, thank
you care.
you.
So, But with that being said, we're going to move on for tips for moms to be, okay? You know, maybe wink, wink. Wink, wink. It might be you out there. You know, I just want to hear about, like, for tips for expectant mothers, like, what's nutrition, self-care,
mental health.
Exactly.
What's the vibe? Where
Let the girls know.
Yeah.
The besties know.
How much time do we have? Well, okay, so here's where I will start. First, I think it is uber important to put together a team of medical professionals that you trust. Yeah. If you're leaving your prenatal appointments feeling meh, or feeling like, gosh, I don't really feel like I was heard, or feeling like, I mean, that's just who I was assigned, you should change providers. I want you leaving your prenatal saying, hell yeah, I feel jazzed up. This person loves me. They care for me. They remember who I am. They understand my goals. When I bring concerns to them, I'm feeling heard. I don't feel dismissed. I don't feel belittled. I'm not feeling like they're pressuring me into decisions that don't feel aligned to me. So that is first and foremost. If you can hire a doula, I think hiring a doula, I know there are financial barriers that come with that. So think about asking people, instead of gifting you things at your baby shower, to put into a fund, much like a honeymoon fund. You can have people pay for your doula. Doulas often barter. So if you have a service that you could barter with, do that.
Okay. Wow, I didn't know this. I'm taking tips because I'm going to need a doula when my baby's on the way.
We're going to be calling her up.
I'm calling HeHe.
Absolutely. So find a medical team that is, aligned with you. Hire a doula. Make a birth plan. So a lot of people think that making a birth plan is planning out your birth, and it's really not. There's a lot of good data and science that says when you make a birth plan, you have a more positive birth, not because your birth goes according to plan, but because by making your birth plan, you explore those options. You know what your rights are in the hospital. You have the education to then go in and make those informed decisions, to have those discussions with your provider. You actually get a little bit more confident too, because you get to really step into your voice as a mom and say, actually, I don't like what you're telling me, or actually, I don't like the way you're speaking to me, or actually, I don't want to introduce Pitocin to my birth, and I know that I have other options. You guys talked about nutrition. That is huge. Finding, a prenatal that is aligned with you, that you feel good with the ingredients, that doesn't make you feel sick. Protein is huge in pregnancy. Having enough protein in pregnancy can help stave off a ton of problems later in pregnancy.
I know a lot of women too, they'll be during pregnancy, they'll get diabetes too. So like how to avoid that? Do you think that, I know it has to do with nutrition, but how that ties in too?
Yeah, so gestational diabetes too has a lot to do with your placenta. So not always will it be able to be avoided, but having adequate protein and yes, being very mindful of your nutrition, making sure that your magnesium levels are appropriate can all help you have a healthier pregnancy. And fun fact, very rarely is there a prenatal that actually has every single thing that you need. So go through and make sure that when you're looking at each individual thing that you should be having in pregnancy, you look up your daily amount that you should be having in pregnancy. Then you look up what your prenatal has, and if there's any need for supplementation, that you're talking to your provider about what your prenatal may not be giving you.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna be texting you
about
the prenatal.
What I need to know, babe.
I know, because wow. I wanted to shift this really quickly though, is about the fear of birth. And I'm gonna have to drop this stat here because it's a crazy stat that I just saw, and it may or may not be right, but I'm gonna drop it for you guys to see. Is they said that childbirth is the second most painful outside of being burnt alive to a human. And honestly, not even the pushing in the birth part scares me. That epidural needle is terrifying. So please tell us what, for the woman out there that is just, they're literally afraid.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do they do?
What do we do to ease their mind?
First, let me start with this. I don't think men could withstand childbirth.
Hold on.
So
Say that again. Let them know. Repeat it.
I do not think that the human race would continue if men had to have babies. So first, dig into your feminine. Know that you were meant for this. That every single woman around you ever for like the history of Earth has been having babies. Your body was meant for this. And even if things do go wrong, let's say you do develop gestational diabetes or you do develop something like HELP syndrome, your body will give you communication. Your body will give you signs and signals. And so your job is to not be so, married to this idea of what your birth has to be, but instead have an idea of what you want it to be, but be flexible with what you expect from your birth experience. Next, there are a ton of things that we can do with the pain relief. You don't have to have an epidural, and that doesn't mean you have no pain relief. You don't have to be like in a corner, rocking back and forth, like in pain. The more that you fight those contractions, the better you will be able to relax, the more efficient your contractions will be able to work, and the shorter your labor will be. So if we go into labor and we're like all tense stuff like this, you're looking at really inefficient contractions. You're looking at a body that is not working with your contractions. It's working against them, and you're looking at a longer labor. So really focusing on how can you start to connect your mind and your body? How can you start to build that bond while they're still inside of you with your baby, and then putting into what I call your birth toolbox. So learn about things like hydrotherapy. How can hot water, the shower, the bath, they have these really cool pads too that they have hot water flowing through them that can go on a hospital bed and you can lay on them. Hydrotherapy is awesome for labor. Movement is amazing. Breath work is amazing. There's this indigenous tool that originates from Guatemalan midwives and Mexican culture. It's called a rebozo, and it is also a really great pain relief tool. Spinning babies is another really awesome way to help get your baby in alignment for labor. If you have a baby that's in the optimal position for labor, you're going to have a shorter labor, you're going to have more efficient contractions, and it's going to be less painful. So there are a lot of things that in pregnancy you can start to work on. Outside of the, what we call non-pharmacological options, you do have things like Nubain and Stadol. They'll go through an IV, and it's just narcotics, it's just pain relief, and you'll get a nice little nap with those. We have nitrous oxide, which is a gas. You breathe it in, just like what we have at the dentist, but it's a little different of a ratio with the nitrous and the oxygen. And then we have the epidural, obviously. But you're right. A lot of people carry a lot of fear around that epidural. So you don't have to have an epidural, but you definitely, whether you are planning for an epidural or not, you want to know about it because you may reach a place in labor where you need to pivot to an epidural, even if it wasn't your original plan.
Sis, I didn't know about all this stuff. Why didn't I know? There's not enough resources.
Because in school, they're too busy teaching us the Pythagorean theorem or the Pythagorean theorem. They're too busy teaching us that we've never used ever since we've left school. This is very important information for all the young girls. I mean, these are the resources we need to know.
Now I feel less scared.
Oh,
I'm like,
good.
She just told me 10 of the things I could do
I was about to
besides
say, imagine if I did this in just 20 minutes.
Right.
Imagine what I could do in 10 prenatals for you.
That's what I'm saying. I know who I'm going to call. I don't know about y'all, but...
Wow, that was extremely, extremely insightful. I just wanted to also just a quick, I don't want to say, it's kind of a controversial topic, because you said you are essentially, your services, you stay in contact and you're still with the woman 90 days after, right? So that controversial internet snapback body or like woman, like they are in the societal pressures after of snapping back. What are your tips for women that are struggling even with their body after birth? Because, like you said, they're changing completely.
I don't know. Am I allowed to say bad words? Can I say
Yeah, girl.
Can I say fuck societal pressure to bounce back? That is really it, right? Your body's not meant to snap back. Your uterus needs several months to come back to its original size. It has a lot of stuff that it is doing. In your first 4 to 6 weeks after you have a baby, you're still bleeding heavily. Your body is getting rid of a lot of afterbirth is what we call it in the industry. And so you just have stuff that's coming out of you. Your uterus needs time to shrink back. Your breasts are feeding your baby if you're choosing to breastfeed. I mean, they're literally the lifeline for your child. We want you focused on you. We want you focusing on nutrients for you. So eat well for you so that you're eating well for your baby. Get your nutrition in. It's hard with a baby, but try and sleep when you can. Keep your hydration up. Again, prioritize that protein, hydration, magnesium. You have so many things that you can focus on instead of getting back to the gym. Now, that doesn't mean don't be mobile. That doesn't mean don't incorporate movement into your day. You can go out on walks, and the further you get out from birth, the older your baby gets, the more comfortable you get in your new body, you'll be able to reincorporate those things. But right after birth, those first 4, 6, 8 weeks, that focus should really be about honoring your body, honoring the process that you just went through, and learning your new baby. So this is a human you've never met before. I know you just grew them in your belly, but you have really never met them. And so you're going to have this period of time where you're getting to know your baby and their sounds and their personality and, the ways that they ask for things, the way that they communicate. They don't like something. There's just so much going on that for me personally, I don't think focusing on necessarily bouncing back in a way that is focused on just the way you look is the right thing to do. And I get it if that's a priority for you. I would never, shame somebody for that, but I definitely think there are better ways to spend your time and your mental energy. And taking care of yourself mentally is so important because if you're not well, your family cannot be well.
Yeah. That's 100%. I mean, I even say this. I'm like, you can't give to anybody unless you are good, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't serve, and you love to say this, you cannot serve from an empty cup. I'm starting to sound like my co-host here.
Twin. We literally do more.
I know, the baddie besties. I guess we're going to do a quick, fun, segment, quick fun round. I guess, the do's and don'ts.
Okay.
What was the do's and don'ts you would say in pregnancy? We'll just start off with that one.
Yeah. So do surround yourself with positive birth stories. Do find a healthcare team that empowers you. Do tell the people in your life how they can be helpful to you because everybody wants to be helpful to a pregnant person, but I find that very few people actually know what that means or know how to do that. So don't be afraid to say that wasn't helpful, but this would be really, really helpful. Or I actually don't need help with that, but what I could use help with is this or this. And so give the people in your life. Do find good nutrition and a good prenatal. Do put together your intentional team. So whether that is your partner or your mom or your best friend or your doula, be intentional on the things. And then do learn your options, know your rights inside of the hospital, and be educated so that you can make those informed decisions. Don't be focused on your weight gain. You're growing a baby. You're literally growing a whole human. You're going to gain weight. That's normal. That's expected. You can't grow a whole nother human without gaining weight. Your body will come back. But remember, your body was meant to do this. So that weight gain it's not a reflection of you or your ability to be a mom or anything. It's really just an indicator that you have a healthy pregnancy. Don't avoid the gym. I think that you should be working out. We know that an ACOG does suggest that regular movement, 30 minutes a day, moderate level of intensity, 5 times a week, so you're looking at about 150 minutes a week, will help you have a better birth. Easier birth, shorter birth, less painful contractions, right? All positive things. So don't avoid the gym just because you are pregnant. Is there anything else I would say don't consume traumatic birth stories? They will get in your head and they will ruin things for you, right?
Yeah.
Surround yourself with those positive birth stories. Seek out people that had births that you want. So if you're hoping to have a home birth, you should join a bunch of groups with home birthers. If you're hoping to have a positive epidural hospital birth, then find friends that had a positive hospital birth and they also had an epidural. If you're hoping to have an unmedicated birth but in the hospital setting, join groups and find women who had that type of birth so that you can learn what worked for them and what didn't work for them.
I know with HIPAA and everything, you can't share any personal or into detail stories. Is there any maybe traumatic stories you've ever heard or potentially experienced on a surface level?
Yeah.
Or maybe you've heard online, social media. I mean, that's probably what made me afraid.
Yeah. I mean, I think overall, Pitocin is probably one of the most traumatic things that women get in labor, and not because Pitocin itself. So Pitocin is a drug. It is very similar to oxytocin. So oxytocin in our brain is actually responsible for contractions. We also have prostaglandins in our body, which we all experience on our period. So they are the reason that we have period poops. Wonderful prostaglandins. You will also have an abundance of prostaglandins during labor, but oxytocin is, natural from our brain. It's organic. Mm-hmm. Pitocin is lab made. So as similar as they can make it, it will never be the same as natural oxytocin. And so our bodies will never respond to it in the exact same way as organic oxytocin. Exactly. And so Pitocin is not a bad drug, but how the American hospital systems use Pitocin is a very bad thing. We are typically seeing it introduced too early in labor. They're typically doing it too much and too fast. So instead of using it incrementally in low doses and bumping it up very slowly, we usually see them ramp it up really fast, and we get to these really crazy doses of Pitocin inappropriately.
What's the effects of that?
Exactly, which can lead to really bad things. So number one, funky fetal heart tone. So your baby just is not tolerating these contractions, which typically will then lead to an unnecessary C-section, right? And so now you have a mom who wanted a vaginal delivery. She wanted to have this positive, gentle birth, but because of something that the hospital system did, that's called iatrogenic. She now has all this birth trauma. She now had an abdominal surgery. Instead of a 6 to 8 week recovery period, now you're looking at 12, 16, 20 weeks of recovery. Some people need several months to recover from a C-section because we're going, unfun fact, we're going 7 layers deep to get down to your baby.
Don't tell me those things.
Just imagine.
And so, and that's not bad.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have C-sections. You talk about things I've seen in the birth room. There are certainly babies that need to be born via C-section. I'm very grateful that we have C-sections.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be doing them on 1 out of 3 women. When 3 women walk into the hospital,
unnecessary.
One of them should not always be walking away with an unnecessarian.
Then question, is it just, I don't know the numbers. Are there such a higher profit margin to do the C-section? Is that the T behind that?
That's the T. And, it's hard to know on the internet, but and all hospitals are set up differently. And reimbursement rates from insurances are set up differently. But there is certainly financial incentive to do surgery over having a vaginal delivery. You also have to think, too, if we can schedule someone to come in, it's much easier than to have someone come in and we don't know when that bed is going to be available. And that bed turnover is where our profit comes from, right? And so, there's certainly financial incentive to do surgery. And I want to be clear, you don't want your doctor having financial incentive either way. We don't want financial incentives for vaginal birth or C-section births because we would ideally, in an ideal world, our doctors would be coming to us with neutrality. They would be coming to us, leaving the decision in your hands and truly guiding you in the best direction for you and your baby without the outside influence of any sort of monetary compensation.
Yeah.
Wow.
I agree.
That's
harrowing.
a lot. Yeah, that's a lot to take. That's a lot to take on.
I know. I feel
and disappointing.
Bad. I know. And I feel bad putting that on people, but the power that you have in that is knowing that is a thing.
Yeah.
And having that information to make your own informed decisions, right? So it's taking an out-of-hospital childbirth education. So do's and don'ts. Do take an out-of-hospital childbirth education. The people who are attending your labors for money should not be the ones who are teaching you how to have your baby. Yeah. You want somebody teaching you how to have your baby that does not have any sort of financial implications on your birth. So I get paid for your birth regardless of how your birth ends up. And that's how you want it. I get paid the same.
Yeah.
Regardless
if
of
it's
how
the other
things
way
happen.
around, it's like you might tell me what it's going to give you
the
the most
bias,
of the money, right? Yeah.
The bias.
Exactly.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they have to feed their family too.
Yeah. And look, there will always be an unequal, financial responsibility there from the hospital. In a vaginal birth, you're looking at an OB or a midwife and a nurse that has been with you, and then 1 or 2 additional nurses, so floor hospital staff. In an OR, you're looking at 6 to 10 hospital staff, depending on how many babies are being born, depending on if any complications pop up, depending on if it's a teaching hospital, depending on how that hospital has its, systems and protocols set up. So you have to think about what that hospital is paying out when it comes to a vaginal birth versus a C-section, but I just am a firm believer that there has to be a better way to do it than what we're doing now. It's really hard to say what that would be because I think a lot of it is behind closed doors and your average everyday people just don't have access to that information, including me. I mean, I just don't have all the pieces to be able to say, here's how we could do it better. But I know there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I have this final question. This is for expectant mothers, and it's not, I don't want to say far-fetched, but it happens to, I guess, and maybe you will obviously inform us, is breech, when mothers are in breech. So I'm just, maybe let them know what it is having a breech pregnancy, maybe some tips, shed some light there, and we'll pretty much wrap it up. But for any expectant mothers, I think this advice, it can make or break, your experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So used to, breech birth was a thing. And we used to have breech babies vaginally all the time. Now, a breech baby is when your baby is not head down. They can be transverse, where they're lying side to side. They can have their butt down and their feet up. Yeah, they might just be what's called footling, and their feet are down below. There are different variations of breech. In America, most breeches now are what I like to call, and it's a little harsh, but forced C-sections, because you're never given the opportunity to go forth with a vaginal breech birth. However, there's an organization called Breech Without Borders, and I've taken several of their trainings. I go to a breech conference held by Dr. Nathan Riley each year, and we learn about not only the safety of breech birth, but how do you actually employ the techniques to empower women to have safe vaginal breech births, whether that baby is footling and their feet are presenting first, their butt is presenting first. Unfortunately, if your baby is sideways, there's no way for that baby to come out. So that would be a case where you would need a C-section, and goes back to, thank goodness we have C-sections, right? If your baby is lying across your stomach, there's just not a way. They do have to be vertical for them to come out, whether that be head up or head down. But yeah, if you have a breech baby out there, I'll even look at the camera. If you have a breech baby out there, you should be looking into vaginal breech birth. You do not have to have a C-section. And I think that is, I think that's something that a lot of women desire, but they're often scared out of it. A big problem is that medical schools are not teaching it anymore. And so we have this huge deficit of medical providers who not only do they not know how to deliver a vaginal breech birth, but they're terrified of it, because through their teachings, through their education, through their medical school, they've been taught that it's this dangerous, crazy, wild, negligent thing that you would do if you ever tried to have a vaginal breech birth. But in reality, we know that those babies fare just as well and as head-down babies, and their moms often fare better because they don't have the trauma of an unwanted C-section.
So what would you say in terms of advocating, women to advocate for them if they wanted to do a vaginal breech?
Yeah.
Birth.
Vaginal breech birth.
I know it's kind of a tongue twister.
It is a tongue
bit, right?
twister.
I'm like, I don't want to get it wrong. So how would they advocate for themselves, especially if their provider, they don't even know how to do it?
Yeah, you got to change providers.
Wow.
I mean, you can't have a vaginal breech birth with someone who's not trained in it, right?
Yeah.
That is not safe. So it does come down to finding vaginal providers that are trained in vaginal breech birth, and they are all over the country. They're sparse. They're scarce, but they exist. And so what it may mean for you is that you may have to have a home birth, when you weren't planning it. You may have to travel further, even though there's a hospital that's 20 minutes away. You may end up going 2 hours away because the nearest vaginal breech birth trained provider is 2 hours away. You may need to go out of state. You know, if you're in a state that doesn't have a provider at all, and now we've circled back to the burden that women have in trying to be empowered and make the decisions that feel good for them in a country that doesn't necessarily support that all the time.
Yeah, it's really, really unfortunate because imagine if they don't have the resources, right?
Totally.
Have to fly, doing all of that when there is a hospital. So now I don't want to say it becomes an unnecessarian, but it kind of feels like, hey, I have no option.
It
so
totally
now I
is.
have to go with this provider because I have no choice.
Yeah, it totally is. That's the story of American healthcare, though, right? That's not specific to birth. That's not specific to women's health, although a lot of times it feels like it is. American healthcare is all about not having the resources and if only I had this, or if only that doctor was trained, or if only I had a better hospital by me, if only I had a doctor that looked like me, that grew up like me, that understood my culture. And unfortunately, we just don't all have that.
Yeah. I don't want to hear any more if only stories. I hope that tomorrow and as the future and everything unfolds and just the work that you're doing, that we'll have one less if onlys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We need HeHe to get 1 million followers because everyone needs to find out, even if it's, just through what you're sharing, other people can start understanding what it means to have a doula and what it's going to provide for them, and get on Google, get on Instagram, and find one nearby, or come to your organization, right? I think it's so important, and you definitely inspired me today and taught me a lot.
Yeah, thank you for empowering. Us, not expectant mothers yet, but
down the line.
The dream to be, a mother. And I cannot thank you enough for coming and joining Baddie Besties. I don't know if you want to say one last word. We appreciate you so much. If any of the girlies, the besties, are afraid of having a child, you need to listen to this episode because this completely changed my perspective.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that is honestly, that's my whole goal in life, is to just have people understand that birth does not have to be scary. It doesn't have to be this really unpredictable, uncontrollable event. It can be something that is empowering and that truly it gives you that light in your life. It makes you feel like a badass. When you look back on your birth, you can say, I did that. And so that's what I want for women all over. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It was like such a big honor. I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you. And besties, we may stir the pot.
It's going to get hot.
But trust.
You just hit the jackpot. Okay.
Okay. Thank y'all for tuning in. You don't want to miss this episode. She does it all, but she's really that girl, and she is a pave maker, and we are so excited to have her in Hey Barbie. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, follow, comment, and check out her page, okay, if you have not yet.
Yeah, share her with a friend, share her with a bestie who, you guys be kiki-keying about how you're scared to have babies, because we kiki-key about that too. Make sure you share, and you guys know where to find us. So
Yes, all the expectant mothers, this is the episode for you.
Yeah. Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you.